I'm Dean Stott.
And I'm Alana Stott.
And you're listening to Behind the Scene Podcast. In this special Season 2 in collaboration with 511, we're going to go back and interview those who are in front of the camera and behind the camera from Toughest Forces on Earth.
Toughest Forces on Earth was an incredible show and we were both delighted to be part of it. We got to meet some of the most incredible forces around the world. Like any other viewer, we were left wanting more, so we wanted to find out more about how they work, why they work, and what it is they do. This season will give you that.
On this episode, I'm interviewing Stefan Erlandsson from the Swedish Parachute Rangers. We're talking more about surviving in the Arctic, ice-breaking drills, and Sweden now joining NATO. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Hey, Stefan, it's good to see you again. Obviously in warmer climates.
I don't know. I mean, like I'm still in Sweden at least, and when it's not that warm here. I mean, it's May and it's actually been snowing from the side. So yeah, you might have it better. Like
sunny California is a lot better.
Yeah.
Probably just to start off with, Stefan, if you could just quickly introduce yourself and just talk about your military career, if possible.
Yeah. So my name is Stefan Erlandsson. I'm from Sweden, and I belong to what in Sweden we call Fallskärmsjägarna, which is basically Parachute Rangers, which is part of the Swedish Army. I started my career in 2003, did the conscript for 15 months, and then I didn't do much more until around 2012 when I went in back again with that change in the military setup in Sweden, and I've been employed since then and still employed, but as of now I'm a civilian, but going back in and doing some work a couple of weeks a year.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned Parachute Rangers and not Para Rangers, because the amount of times Cameron and Ryan and I got confused. They're like, you're going to go to Sweden and see the Power Rangers. We expect you guys to come out in these multicolored suits. But one thing you just touched on there really is the start of your career was 15 months conscript. I've heard of this. This is quite popular within the Scandinavian nations, but there are probably a lot of listeners who don't really understand that concept. Can you just explain to them, what the conscript is for you guys in Sweden and why you have to do it?
So yeah, so it's been different throughout the years, but let's talk about when I did it, because that's when I will be able to give you the exact what actually how it was and how the tryout was and how it worked back then, because it's been slightly changed going back and forth. But as it was back then, we had the conscript. Is that basically when you turn 18, you need to go in and do trials for the military, and it's mandatory, and if you do not do it, if you don't attend, you will be picked up by the military police basically. It's kind of a part of the law that when I did it was applied to men only, which means that you have to do your service for I think it was at least 8 months or 8 or 10. I don't remember if it was 8 or 10 months when I did it. That was the mandatory period, and it kind of applies to everyone else. So that's the conscript of Sweden.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I'd seen it in Norway. I remember going on tour in Kosovo, and all these Norwegians started saluting us. I was like, "What are you doing?" I'm not an officer, but obviously they recognize that you're regular forces, and that's really when I first came across the conscripts, and I think it's a great idea. Personally, I think it should be reintroduced to all nations, but there might be absolute uproar if that ever happened. And so what is your selection process like for the Parachute Rangers? Just talk us through that from coming through the camp gates as a civilian and actually being fully pledged Parachute Ranger.
Yeah, so it's a pretty long process actually, and then it comes back to when you're applying for becoming a parachute ranger. It's not something that you can do when you do your normal tryouts. So what happens is that you do your normal tryouts, and then you're scored in regards to intelligence. You're scored in regards to your strength. You're scored in regards to your stamina. You're scored in regards from kind of a psychologist in your mental stability. And then you meet the person that you have a discussion with on how do I want to do my military service. And then what you can do then is you can say is like, I want to become a parachute ranger. They will never be able to say that that's what you will do. They will only be able to tell you, okay, so you want to do that, then you will have to do a couple of extra tests, which is kind of for all the kind of the rangers, which is kind of a bit of a longer conscript test, where they can do a little bit more kind of tryouts, and then you apply for it. And then you have to send in a kind of a resume. You have to do your own kind of longer running test and send that in, and then also get kind of a written contract from either your trainer at your professional sport, or your kind of a teacher within athletics or something like that. And then if your results from the conscript and what you've done is good enough, then you will get the reply back that you're welcome for initial tryouts. And those initial tryouts, they will bring in a couple of hundred. So when I did it, they took in every second year there was an intake. So as kind of the conscript period was 15 months, and then they take in around 60 people every second year. So it kind of, and the officers working with the education, they finish those 15 months before they kind of go into the next one. So you are then applied for the first test, which then goes over 2 days, which is a more in-depth psychology evaluation, which was a very strange actually experience, because you're sitting there and feeling all cool and think that you've done good stuff in your life, and everything you say kind of gets turned back to you and say like, yeah, but that's not good. What did you do that? It's like, I thought it was a good thing. It's like, yeah, but it's not. It's like, so you're kind of, and then it's more where they test you much harder in regards to your strength, and then your kind of stress, and then you test you in water, like how you engage with water. There's this funny test that I can actually tell you about, because everybody knows about it. When you're standing, I think it's 5 meters up or something like that, and then you're supposed to fall, you turn your back against the water, and you're supposed to just fall back into the water and dive. If you do it properly, if you just fall, it's it's gonna be fine. But if you're scared and you kind of jump out a little bit, then you're gonna land on your back and it's gonna hurt like hell, and then you have to go back up and try again. Yeah. So a couple of kind of those tests. So it's a 2-day period, and if you are successful on that, then you're entitled to start the first trial period. So out of all the kind of the conscripts that search for this kind of education, which is not the mandatory part of the military, because you can only apply, and whenever you say I don't want to do it anymore, you can actually step off, but then you go back to doing a normal conscript. And if you're successful the first 2 days, then you get into the first kind of 4 months of trial, which will be probably around half of a year later. So then you can start the first 4 months of trial, which is basically, not 4 months, 1 month is 4 weeks. So the first 4 weeks of trial period, which is basically 4 weeks of hell.
Wow.
It's they just push you to the limits. You have mornings where you start off, and there's this officer coming in and just basically saying, it's like, my only objective of the day is to get as many of you as possible to quit. That's my objective of the day. And then like, now we're going to do push-ups and see who's the worst of doing push-ups. So it's 4 weeks of hell where you just basically think that I'm sorry to kind of use a swear word, but these motherfuckers just want to make my day really, really bad. So, and during those 4 weeks, you do kind of an additional test where you have to run 10 kilometers under a certain amount of time. You have to be able to do certain amount of pull-ups. You have to be kind of fast enough walking with heavy gear. You have to be able to shoot good enough. And then there's kind of tons of tests during those 4 weeks. And then kind of, yeah.
Wow.
I think that's it.
Yeah, it's quite a lengthy. That's quite a lengthy process. That one thing you touched on, the psychological evaluation for 2 days. Thankfully, they never did that for me and Ryan. Otherwise, we'd never end up in the military. But one of the things you touched on, which hit home, was that water test. We used to do that. I was an instructor at the diving school, and we would do that as well. And so, for the listeners, what you do is you go to the top diving board, and as Stefan said, you turn with your back to the water, and you just have to put your hands down by your side and just stay in a rigid position and just naturally fall. And if you don't move, you don't flinch, you will just land perfectly head down. But what it is really to trick the mind. A lot of people flinch, they look behind them, and they just have back slaps. So yeah, I've seen that before, and we've managed to do that as well with someone on my shoulders. Yeah, I think we did have a few drinks though before we did that, but it was just to prove a test. Yeah. But and do you guys get an opportunity to cross-train with any of the other nations? A lot of the nations that we visit, a lot of nations, when I was in, I did see a lot of guys doing cross-training, going to other countries, and also having guests from other nations. Do you get the opportunity to do that?
Yeah, definitely. So myself has been more like I've done a couple of NATO exercises, both in Sweden and abroad as well.
Oh, amazing! That's great. And probably start getting into the actual show then. So the show was obviously myself, Cameron, and Ryan working alongside the Parachute Rangers, and we were doing a SEER course, which for the listeners is a Survival Evasion Resistance Extraction course. And we had Major Jonas Manson, Sergeant Major Max Paulsen, and Sergeant Elizabeth Johansson. No doubt you guys had already done this SEER course before. I was fortunate. I did the SEER course on my selection. I've done survival courses in the jungle, but I'd never done one in the Arctic. So for you guys, you must have been repeating yourself. It probably wasn't a pleasant experience when you first did it, and you're going to have to do it again. But I remember when we walked in to the room and we first met you and your guys, and a comment you made was, if you sweat, you die. But you do sweat and it's heavy ski. So what is it you really mean by that comment? I was fortunate that I was a military ski instructor and Arctic warfare instructor, so I knew what you meant. But for the likes of Cameron, who'd never been to the Arctic before, that really took him back.
Yeah, no, but it's a good question. So what you have to understand is, like, we're in the military, so it's not civilians. So we can't really actually decide what's going to happen next. And then you have, you got one pair of insulation. You got like your warm sweater that you can put on. And it's nice to put it on. So imagine, you've been skiing, you sit down, you put on your warm clothes. It's minus 35 outside. And what you have to understand is, like, when in the Arctic, is that regardless if it's training or it's for real, the nature is always for real. If it's minus 35 degrees and the wind starts blowing, you will get cold, and you have to take care of yourself. But now imagine that it's real now, and we're sitting there, and you're putting on your sweater, and you feel all warm and cozy. And it's like, we're gonna start skiing in just a couple of minutes. I just put this one on. It's gonna be enough, and then you start to feeling the chill just before you're gonna start skiing again, and then you feel like, it would be nice to keep this sweater on. And you would do it. You keep the sweater on, and then what happens is that just 2 minutes off, somebody starts shooting at you, and you just have to ski for your life for 2-3 hours, and you're all sweat through, and you're all wet, and that's the clothes that you have, and you're all wet, and you have nothing warm to put on, 35 degrees minus outside. So what's going to happen then is that you're probably going to freeze to death because you have nothing warm to put on. So it's not that you sweat, you die. It's that if you're taking the wrong actions when you're warm or when you're cold, and then you sweat in the wrong conditions for the wrong reason, then you might kill yourself.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, when was it? When I did my Arctic course. So obviously, I at the time I was in the UK Commandos, so we used to go to Norway 3 months every year with the Royal Marines, and so I did my my basic novice course back in 1997, I think it was, January 97. And I remember that. I remember our instructor is a guy called Ian Mewison, a huge guy from Recce Troop. And he said, you start cold. It's very easy to, in the morning, to turn up on parade with your jumper on and things like that. But he said, just start the day cold. And it's very uncomfortable. And that's one thing about the Arctic is if you feel uncomfortable, you're doing it right. If you're comfortable, then there's something wrong. But there's two enemies, I always say, in the Arctic. There's the enemy that you're fighting, but the biggest enemy really is the environment as well. And as you touched on with that comment is, the guys that haven't been in the Arctic before, if you start sweating, that just turns to ice straight away. I mean, it starts having an effect on your body. So, yeah, I think we were just taken back by, that was literally your first comment when we walked in. You sweat, you die. We're like, oh my God, look at that. Don't do any exercise. Don't do any exercise at all.
No. But the funny thing is also it gets rather warm when you're skiing because it's, it is heavy to ski. So it's like, but and as you say, if you're doing it right, you are cold. It's okay. You just have to be comfortable with being a little bit cold sometimes. It's fine. You're not going to die from that. You're just a little bit cold.
Yeah, and if you, I used to say to my students as well, if they were cold, they'd soon warm up and just get them doing star jumps and stuff. They'd never complain that they were cold again. They'd just stand there and just take it. But obviously, you guys are experts in Arctic warfare. But what other environments do you guys operate in? Because it's not just the Arctic, is it?
We're actually more of a kind of let's say in the woods, in the forest. Because most of the time, there is no snow in Sweden, so it's more like operating within the forest, but and also in the archipelago. And for you that don't know what an archipelago is, basically, it's like a lot of islands. Because we have lots of water in Sweden and lots of islands. So we operate around the archipelago. We can parachute down to the water, but mostly it's operating kind of in the forest, but also in in the city as well.
Yeah. No, I remember when we were doing some exercises in the Arctic. 1 minute there's snow everywhere. I mean, as you start descending down the hill, there's a lot of greenery as well. There's no snow on the trees, and you had to actually reflect that in your camouflage. If you had all white, you'd probably just take your white top off so it was green to match with the trees. So that's one thing I found hard with the Arctic is you're constantly monitoring what you look like to your environment. But I remember turning up on day one, as we touched on, I'm very fortunate I've been to the Arctic, and I did my ski instructor's course actually in Rjukan in Norway. I'd never skied before I joined the army, and then went off and did my Langlauf course. But as you know, with the military take great hobbies like skiing, parachuting, diving, and then they make it harder.
Definitely.
It was
you can do this the easy way, but we can also do it the hard way. Let's do it the hard way. Yeah,
let's do it the hard way. So my first exposure to skiing was always the hard way. But the Cameron and Ryan, they went off and did some initial ski training themselves. Ryan had been to Alaska, but mentioned that they don't actually ski when they're in Alaska. They have just snowshoes on, which is strange. But so those guys got exposure to that, and Max put them through their paces, which is great to see on the TV. And then Major Jonas pulled me aside, and we went and did some contact drills with the weapons. So you guys had the Ryan said it's the AK-5. Is that right? The AK-5, yeah. And obviously when you're operating with gloves, you need a larger trigger guard, cocking handle, and everything else. But I do, I've managed to do contact drills in all environments, and without a doubt, the hardest one has to be the Arctic, because you have to take your gloves off, you have to get the weapon in position, you have to have a good firing position. Sometimes you can use your sticks. Sometimes you get in the prone position, but then when you're moving, it is difficult. Do you have any stories you can tell or tell me about the first time you skied? Would be good to know. It's probably when you're about 1 year old, and then the first time you did a contact drill.
Yeah, it was a clusterfuck. So, I mean, you've done a couple of months of training, and you're starting to get into it. And you just like, before you go off for your first kind of winter training, you start getting into the concept, and you start understanding kind of the ways of contact drills. And then you're getting up there, it is that you have to re-educate yourself entirely, because everything is so slow. And then the first thing is like the first instinct. So I remember this. The first instinct is like, if you're walking there in the woods, and you're always like, you're 6 people, and then you hear the shots. You just throw yourself down and try to understand where is it coming from. Yeah, and you do that, but it's it's 1.5 to 2 meters of snow, and you're throwing yourself off the track, and then you're just laying there in the snow. You can't get up, because it's however you push with your hands, there's nothing helping you up. So everybody's just laying there in the snow, and you have the backpack on, and you're not getting up. You just realize, okay, maybe how do we do this? Because this is not working. This is like maybe like a tortoise on the back. It's like you can't do anything. So that was a little bit of a clusterfuck, I would say, the first experience.
Yeah, it's hard. Without a doubt, the hardest environment to do contact drills in. The first exercise, the exercise after that we did on the show was the marshmallows, the fire lighting exercise, and we got split into teams. It was Eagle 1. I was with yourself and a couple of the other guys. I mean, Cameron and Ryan were in another group. Ryan and Cameron unfortunately ended up losing that test. But and the reason for that was I was there. I was collecting all my sticks and everything else, and then you just had this shovel and were just digging away. And I was like, what's he doing? But it then became evident later, and obviously Cameron and Ryan didn't succeed, but Elizabeth came and explained that they didn't have enough oxygen. So could you explain to the listeners, what it was you were doing and how that helped us be successful on that first test?
I mean, the first thing what I wanted to do, because there was snow, but it wasn't that deep. So what I wanted to do is that I wanted to get down to the ground, which means that whenever we started heating it up, the fire is not going to sink down to the snow. Because what happens is when it sinks down to the snow, we're gonna have really bad of oxygen flow into it. So getting down to the snow, but also digging rather kind of wide as well, because I want the flow of air to come in. Because I also knew that you're gonna be running in from all sides. You're not gonna care about not pushing in snow. So there's gonna be snow coming in from the sides as well. So I feel that the size is good now, it's going to be bad whenever you come back with all your stuff. So that was my, my mission was to make it successful for you guys to create the fire, basically. Get down and then make sure that there's, space so that we can get oxygen flow in.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. Ryan and Cameron, fair play to them. They got theirs lit straight away, and they were quite excited. You could probably hear how excited they were. But yeah, actually, as you touched on, they just didn't have enough space around them to get that oxygen in, which it was really upset Ryan. We just kept our cool, and we had our water. But I think from then on, every time Ryan did a fire, he made sure that everyone, I think you could see it from satellite, everyone could see that he actually made a fire. He made a point that he could actually make fires after that, and was literally burning down half of Sweden. So, which was quite funny.
I think we started talking about like a Ryan fire. When everybody had a big fire, it's like, yeah, it's a Ryan fire. It's a Ryan fire.
Yeah. There's fires. I mean, there's Ryan fires.
Yeah. Can I get back to like a question in regards to revert back to the combat drill?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
One really tricky part about a combat drill in an Arctic environment is not only kind of when you're throwing yourself down, it's super hard to get up. But imagine like every time you go down, every time you turn, you want to go down. Either you want to lay down, but it's hard to do that on snow. But otherwise, you go down on your knees. Yeah, and then what you do then is you go down your knees with your knees on the skis. And this is something that you really need to be good at, because if you're on your knees with the skis, it's good. But if you go doing it, if you get your knees down on the skis in slight of an angle and your knee slips off the ski, then you basically fall down. And if you have your backpack on, you're not going to get up. If you don't have your backpack on and it's just a lot of snow, it's still super, super hard. So that kind of makes everything slow, and also you need a lot of precision to do it. So it's hard to be fast.
Oh yeah, it's really difficult to be fast, and you've just touched on some of those considerations. But if you're breaking contact and you're then trying to find a route to go, sometimes the easiest route isn't the best route as well. When you're trying to ski through trees, you may be on a slope, you may have to. There's so many things. It's absolute. I just know, but also you also have to factor the fact that the enemy are also having the same issues as well. So it just depends who's the slickest and the quickest.
Yes. Yeah, and it's hard to be aggressive as well, because moving forward in the snow versus doing that if it's snow. So that's a kind of it's a difference.
Yeah. And we had opportunity to operate a couple of the vehicles when out there. I'd the bandwagon, you guys call it, we call it the BV206. I'd operated that before, so I was driving that as we arrived. But then we had the snowmobiles.
Yeah.
And I struggled at the beginning because I'm a motorcyclist, you know what I mean? So when you're on your motorcycle and you're going into a corner, if it's going to go, you just either take it off or rev it up. But with the snowmobile is the opposite. You lean the opposite side and put power on, doesn't it? So it's from a motorcycling perspective, it was literally the opposite. And so I was really on the first day, I was really trying to get my head around that. And there's a scene in there where I actually go over and, it's probably the only time I went over, but they managed to pick it up. But Ryan did obviously, strange enough, Ryan doesn't ride motorbikes. So he didn't have that muscle memory. So that really worked.
It was good.
Worked well for him. But I think you and I ended up just digging them out a few times. They looked good on the final exercise.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer to ski. Yeah, I prefer to ski. They're not tactical, those snowmobiles, you know what I mean?
It was fun. No, they're fast, but they sound a lot.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that later on, is where you go from those vehicles to being tactical on the skis. But I think the first time we went out to the lake to do the ice breaking drills. And again, just to put a bit of backstory in this, Cameron, from the moment we arrived in Sweden, I did feel for Cameron, because Cameron, I'd been to the Arctic a few times. Ryan's been to Alaska. He'd experienced those snowy conditions. Cameron was very excited to get to Sweden. This was a whole new environment for him. But I think he picked up a viral infection when we arrived, or before he'd even got into Sweden. So he was deteriorating. He was man down. And I remember before we went out to do the ice breaking drills, having done it myself a few times, I know that you need to be 100% on point. If you're feeling ill and not feeling great, put your hand up. And I did say to him, I said, look, Cameron, if you're not feeling great, buddy, put your hand up. But he's young, and I would have probably done exactly the same if I was 26. I would have ignored the old guy and just said, no, I'm going out anyway. But we went and did the ice breaking drills, and I'll probably go back slightly on the ice breaking drills. I obviously had to go first because I'd done it before, which is great. And like I said, I'd done it before. I know how bad it is. It doesn't get any better. But I knew that you had to actually have composure. You get in there, don't panic. It's all about being non-emotional and just go through the process. And also, I didn't want to startle Cameron and Ryan as well. If they saw emotion in my face, it would alert them. And so I went through my process, which was fine. Ryan did well as well. And then Cameron, he did well. He got out. There was a bit of a cluster. His skis kept falling back in, and you could see as it was going on, he was getting more agitated as well. But that exposure in that water, that finished Cameron off, didn't it? That really highlighted, how dangerous and how effective that cold weather is. Can you explain to the listeners, why we have to do that exercise?
So basically, I mean, if you're operating in an Arctic environment, I mean, sooner or later you're gonna be facing a lake. There's lots of lakes in Sweden, and then depending on what time of the year is, there could be kind of thin or thick ice, and you might have to cross the ice. And then, there is a possibility that you're gonna fall in. But it's also good exercise for kind of understanding how you feel when you're really cold. So then if you fall in, you have to kind of have done it before, so what are you going to do? How do I get up? Making sure that you don't lose your skis, because if, like I said, if it's this deep snow, you can't basically get there anywhere without your skis. And then you also kind of have to understand there's like, I have to, how do I hold my poles? Because you need to hold on to those, because those are the ones that's going to help you out of the water. And also kind of, how do I operate with my backpack so, I'm not stuck to it. And then, making sure that you don't drown, basically. And then also, getting up, and then how do I do to get warm after that? Because that's very individual, and I think that was really evident. To remember, speaking to Cameron afterwards and trying to, help him get warm. It's like, you can't sit still. Like, you're now cold. Let's go for runs, because I was running with him to make him warm. But I don't think that helped, because he was a little bit sick. But he was so cold, so I still had to get him warm. And you have to help yourself.
Yeah, no, true. And as you touched on there, the reason that we have to do this is that, should you unfortunately fall through the ice. I remember being on an exercise in Norway, we were parachuting in, and one of the guys actually went through the ice there. I mean, he literally, before he'd even started the exercise, he's already doing the ice breaking drills. But the reason you do it is because A, you need to stay alive, but B, also you need to remain operational. You may be, hundreds of miles away from the nearest hospital or nearest camp, so you need to continue that mission. So everyone has to do the ice breaking drills before they can go on exercise or operations from our end. When we did ours in Norway, I remember that when we went in, the instructors used to be a nightmare. So you'd go in, you do the drills, and then when you'd have to ask for permission to come out. And before would even let you out, they would ask you a number of questions, and some of them are very simple questions. What is your military number? And guys used to be flustering and stuttering, and they'd even struggle just to get the simplest of words out. But I remember being obviously divers. We get instructors, and I did it myself when I was instructor. I ask guys like, what is Archimedes' principle? These guys wouldn't even know what it is on a normal day, but but it actually is. If an object is wholly or partially immersed in a liquid, the thrust it receives is equal to the liquid displaced. But these guys don't care about that. They just want to get out. So we have a little bit more fun with them before we get them out. But you guys were, you went easy on us, I thought, which is good. And then we roll around in the snow. We do those exercises you did with us, and then we actually then have it's a Royal Navy tradition. We have a tot of rum as well. So I didn't see any rum. I was looking around, but you guys you didn't deliver on that, unfortunately.
Sorry. You should have told me before.
Yeah. Well, yeah, next time, just for next time. And then what did you think when you were told you're going to be taking part on this show? What was your initial thoughts, A, for yourself? But also, what did you hope to expect for the world to see about the Parachute Rangers?
So the first thing is, like, when I got the question, I thought it was really fun, but I didn't know what it was supposed to be, because with the initial question, it was a lot different than what it actually turned out to be. But I thought it was fun, and my basic question was that, yeah, I'll do it if I get to pick the team. That was my answer to it. So I got to pick the team, which was super good, and all the guys that kind of joined from our end are really guys that I seriously trust with my life, basically. So that was super good. And then my my expectation. What was your second question again? If you can repeat that.
What were you hoping for the world to see about the Para Rangers? What is it you really wanted to showcase to the world?
So I mean, like from my end, I wouldn't say that they would see so much from like the Parachute Rangers, because this is just a small part of what we do, and then this was survival exercise, and we do a lot of stuff that we don't do. I mean, like I would never light a fire, at a normal day. You freeze, or rather, it's going to be super. I mean, like probably lighting a fire, then I'm about to die before I light the fire. But I was more like hoping for people to see how to survive in kind of an Arctic climate, rather than seeing the Parachute Rangers, to see like how can you operate, and there's a lot of things you can do to make it so much easier for yourself. Take care of yourself. Think about it. I mean, like when we did sleep and it was rather cold, we didn't have super cold, but I think that we actually during the night was down to 25, 30 minus on the coldest nights. But it wasn't that bad, because we could take care of ourselves. I think that showing the importance of always taking care of yourself, making sure that your feet are well, making sure that you're fed, taking care of each other, because it's all about, that's what it comes down to when you're operating in small forces, like in the special forces. It's about taking care of the person next to you. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit on a point there. Really, is actually the Arctic is an environment where you can go to have combat. And history's shown that, the normal armies really struggle in those environments. It's really, for those environments, it's only the special forces that can operate fully in those areas. So that's what I loved about the show, is that it really highlighted to the world that, especially more recent years, that all they would see is hot countries. We do operate in the Arctic, we do operate in the desert, we operate in the jungle, temperate, we skydive, we work underwater. There's so many things we do. And that's why I was over the moon that Sweden came on board, because, without a doubt, the hardest environment to operate in. We touched about the contact drills, but also staying alive. Just staying alive is hard. And when you then have a mission as well behind that, that's even more difficult. But I do know, I remember chatting to Major Jonas at the beginning, because we came over in the January of 2023, and I understand that one of the reasons for Sweden taking part is that you guys were keen and at the latter stages of joining NATO. And so it was really to show the world, these are who we are. These guys are great. These are the capabilities you have. These are the assets. And I think now, before the show's even aired, you guys are in NATO now, which is great. So how is joining NATO for you guys, and how does that change the way that you guys, probably not the way you operate, but the way that you now do more exercises and training with other nations?
I mean, the thing is that we weren't a part of NATO, but like I said, I've been on NATO exercises. So we've haven't been a part of exercises, but there's like been joint ventures with NATO countries and also NATO exercises. So I wouldn't say I haven't felt a super big difference, but then there is definitely a change. And that's now kind of I'm a civilian now, so I don't see it, but I have lots of my friends in working in the military, and they see a lot of difference in how we operate, and making sure that we have the right amount of people, with the budget, and it's a different approach. But unfortunately, I can't really pinpoint any particular things.
Yeah. But it can only be beneficial for Sweden, though, really be part of NATO. Yeah, definitely. And then we went on to the final mission. I remember we started the exercise. We cached the snowmobiles, and then, as we touched on earlier on, as we're getting close to the target area, you can't be operating those vehicles, because those sound, especially in the Arctic, travels a lot further distances. And so we had to cache them and then get on our skis, which is good. For us, the Para Rangers, myself, we were moving at some speed, but fair play to Ryan. He'd only been skiing a week, and he managed to keep up. He was giving it his all. So that boy definitely didn't have layers on. He was just sweating anyway. You know what I mean? So
yeah. He did a good job. He did a really good job.
He did a very good job. Yeah, he did a very good job. Yeah, because it was hot. It was hard, you know, things. And I remember when I did my basic ski course, you know, it's difficult. But when you're trying to catch guys who've been doing it for years, and the cameras are on you as well, that's always the thing. The cameras are on you. The camera doesn't lie, apparently. But we then did the official ambush, and then we escaped and evaded. So we did a little mini contact drill ourselves. Good opportunity I think it was the first opportunity for Ryan to be able to get rounds down whilst using skis. So he had his first exposure of how difficult it is to move. And then we did the escape and evade. We ended up first doing the signaling, you know, the V. And Ryan had the opportunity now to do the world's biggest fire because we needed to get attention to the aircraft. So he was loving that. And I think his comment was, "I'm kind of a big deal." I think I was actually stood in there with a signaling mirror, trying to blind the pilot. And actually, it's probably me that caught his attention, not Ryan's smoke. But
the funny thing is, actually, I spoke to the pilot afterwards.
Yeah,
and he really did see the signal mirror. He was like, "Yeah, I could definitely see that one."
Yeah, I remember you telling me you saw the signaling mirror, but you know. But there's no way he was going to miss Ryan's fire either.
No, definitely not.
I was always trying to blind the pilot. You know what I mean? When I used to be instructing the commando course, I said the reason you have a signaling mirror is if you see a plane, you blind the pilot so he crashes and you have a buddy. And then we dug the Quincy shelter. Oh
yeah!
Wow, yeah. That
was fun.
Like we that was about 5 to 6 hours digging that out. But again, for the listeners and the viewers of the show, really just to highlight that, without a tent, you can use nature and the environment and still survive. You know, we only had one night in that Quincy. But how long have you guys had to spend in Quincy's or be on the ground doing your SEER course and do that night after night?
I mean, on the SEER course, it's not that it's not that much longer actually. But during exercises, I've been dug into the snow for, I think, 2 weeks. It's not that fun. Because you just like, a recon mission and you dig down and then you just sit there.
Yeah, I think being fully transparent, I probably had one of the best night's sleep. You know, when you're out in nature, the fresh air.
Yes.
I think Eagle 1, our team, we spent a bit more time on the inside. We actually made sure that there was a bit of elevation between us and the roof, because I know Eagle 2, Ryan's team, you know, in the morning, the snow was on their face, and I don't think they had a great night themselves. I think Ryan actually slept by the fire. We started the course with cam whites, and Ryan ended up handing them over with holes in them, which are black. You guys weren't impressed with that. I remember that.
No, but that's the thing with the Arctic is like, don't take shortcuts in the Arctic. It's gonna bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
Don't take shortcuts in the Arctic. And then to be actually honest, Ryan is a good guy. So no kind of
he is a good guy.
He's a super good guy. I would definitely go into battle with him. No question about that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, shortcuts are dangerous in the Arctic.
Yeah, they are. They're very dangerous. Yeah.
No, it is. It feels good at the time, but taking shortcuts in the Arctic can be costly.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know. Like on our selection, everyone thinks that Special Forces selection is you do triple backwards somersault and throw ninja stars at a target 50 meters away. Actually, it's all about doing the basics and doing the basics well. And that's it. If you take shortcuts, that's where things go wrong. And that's what people don't really realize. Actually, there's no big art to joining the Special Forces. You just do the basics. Because if you do the basics are hard enough in itself. People take shortcuts because the basics are hard. So you just do the basics and basics well.
And you're right, because sometimes it's just like the Special Forces and normalists is like you're willing to freeze a little bit more than the normal people.
Yeah,
it's like that's what
Yeah, true.
I'm not gonna light that fire. I'm not gonna jump around. I'm gonna be still. I'm gonna freeze a little bit more to stay alive.
Yeah, that's it, buddy. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the signaling mirror and Ryan's smoke worked, and we got an extraction, a helo extraction. Again, watching it on the screen, it doesn't show how painful that was. There was literally snow and ice just hitting our faces. That was probably the most painful thing, worse than the ice breaking drill for me. Was just that whiteout. But yeah, that was great because that was the end of the mission for us. But for me, it was a great episode. The quality of the parachute rangers, the quality of the training, but also the environment as well, and that's really shown on the show as well with the drone stuff. Just how beautiful Sweden was. So you guys, you obviously did Sweden proud. And then the final scene, it was me, Ryan, and Cameron, very uncomfortable in a jacuzzi, drinking a beer. We actually caught up with Cameron. We met Cameron after the exercise, and he'd recovered quite well. And so, he managed to get in that last scene. But Stefan, I probably have two more questions for you. I mean, I know you're a busy guy. What does the phrase "always be ready" mean to you?
It's a good question. I mean, always be ready is, I would say that kind of accepting where you are, and then whatever happens, you take an action, regardless of where you are, what's happened. You take action, even though you don't know what to do, even though you've never been in that particular situation before. You take an action. It's better to react and try and do something, and then being too scared to do anything. So basically, it's you take an action, and whatever pops up. That would be like the answer for my part.
That's a great answer. Great answer. And the final one, the Parachute Rangers aside, who would you class as the toughest force on Earth?
I would say I would go for the Swedish SOG or the UK SBS or SAS.
Good answer.
Those are the ones that I would say.
Amazing, yeah. The Swedish SOG, amazing.
Who was your biggest? When you were in Afghanistan, was it like what forces were you most afraid of?
What was I most afraid of? I don't know. I respected a lot. I even respected the enemy. Interesting enough, just I've seen some units around the world, and we did an episode on the show with the Philippines. The Philippines, it was evident that they didn't have as much equipment, but the guys and the characters themselves, they were incredible. You know what I mean? So for me, a toughest force isn't the one that has the most assets, the most capabilities. It's those that are able to do a job with probably the limited capabilities as well. Yeah, that's the one for me.
No, but and that's true. Not like that. But one of the good things with the conscript is that you get everybody into it. You get those people that would never, consider a military career. They get into it and they love it and they stay. Yeah. So I think that's the good thing. But there's one thing that I missed from that they didn't show. I would have loved to have behind the scenes, looking at all the camera people just falling around in the snow. That was like they had a hard time. It's like they actually had a really hard time filming this. I mean, like, you got to give them credit for that because they did a good job.
Oh yeah. The sound guy, the camera guy, they were doing contact drills with cameras. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously trying to keep the lenses clean as well. They're falling in the snow. Yeah. I think they had a harder time than us. But yeah, I would have been good to do some separate bloops on there. But Stefan, thank you so much for joining today. From myself, Cameron, and Ryan, we thoroughly enjoyed our time in Sweden. Please pass on our regards to the guys, and I think you guys coming off really well on this show.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm telling my regards from all the guys as well. And it was really nice doing it with you. I mean, the time we got with Cameron as well, and Ryan. It was super fun.
Yeah, that's why you joined the military, just for the laughs.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers, buddy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.